The moment the flight attendant stopped in the aisle and pointed at him, the cabin seemed to hold its breath. Conversations faded, the low hum of the engines felt louder, and every pair of eyes in first class drifted toward the single father with tired eyes and a little boy asleep against his shoulder. In that instant, with boarding passes crumpled in his hand and judgment already forming in the air, he felt the familiar weight of being unseen and misunderstood pressed down on his chest. He hadn't always lived this way, measuring every breath, every dollar, every glance from strangers. There was a time when life felt wider and kinder, when laughter filled his small apartment and the future seemed like a long road instead of a narrow ledge. But grief has a way of shrinking the world. After his wife died suddenly, leaving him with a 4-year-old son and a heart full of unanswered questions, he learned quickly that survival didn't come with instructions. It came with long nights, unpaid bills, and a constant fear of failing the one person who needed him most. This flight wasn't a luxury. It wasn't a reward. It was a last hope. His mother had fallen ill in another state, and the doctors said the next few days mattered. A distant relative had quietly upgraded his ticket, knowing the man wouldn't accept help if he knew about it. So here he was, in first class for the first time in his life, wearing a borrowed jacket, holding a child who had cried himself to sleep from exhaustion. The flight attendant's voice was calm but sharp, practiced in authority. She told him there must have been a mistake. She said first class was for premium passengers. She asked him to step into the aisle. He tried to explain, his words stumbling over each other, his voice low so he wouldn't wake his son. He held out the boarding pass with shaking fingers, but she barely glanced at it. The look on her face told him everything. In her eyes, he didn't belong. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, embarrassed by the scene. Others watched with curiosity, the way people do when someone else's life becomes unexpected entertainment. The man felt heat rise in his face, the old shame he thought he'd buried returning like a tide. He had been judged before, in grocery store lines when his card declined, in job interviews when employers noticed the gap in his resume, in playgrounds where other parents whispered about the tired dad, who never quite fit in. The flight attendant insisted he move. She said rules were rules. She said families like his were better suited for economy. Each word felt like a small cut, precise and impersonal. He could have argued harder. He could have raised his voice, but he didn't. He never did. Instead, he slowly stood, careful not to jostle his sleeping son, and gathered their small bag from beneath the seat. That was when the boy stirred. His eyes fluttered open, confused and glassy with sleep. He wrapped his arms tighter around his father's neck and whispered a single question, soft and fragile. The sound of it sliced through the tension like glass. The man swallowed hard and kissed his son's hair, telling him everything was okay, even as his own heart cracked a little more as they stood there. A quiet man in a tailored suit a few rows back set down his newspaper. He had been watching the scene unfold, not with curiosity but with recognition. He recognized the look in the father's eyes because he had once worn it himself. Long ago, before success found him, before titles and bank accounts softened the edges of his past, he had been that man-tiered, desperate, invisible. He pressed the call button. When the flight attendant turned toward him, irritation flickered across her face. He spoke calmly, asking what the problem was. She explained quickly, confidently, certain she was enforcing policy. He asked to see the boarding pass. When she hesitated, he asked again, this time with quiet authority. The paper passed between them. The man in the suit read it carefully, then looked up, his gaze steady. He told her the passenger was in the correct seat. He told her the ticket was valid. He told her to apologize. The cabin grew even quieter. The flight attendant's posture stiffened. She glanced around, suddenly aware of how many people were watching. She tried to justify herself, citing procedures and assumptions, but the words came out thin. The man in the suit leaned closer, lowering his voice, and said something that changed everything. He explained that he was the airline's largest private investor. He explained that he had spent years building a company that valued people over appearances. He explained that how they treated the most vulnerable passengers mattered more to him than profit, margins or polished smiles. The color drained from her face. The confidence she had worn so easily moments before crumbled. She looked again at the father and child, really looked this time, and something in her expression shifted. For the first time, she saw not a problem to be removed but a human being standing on the edge of breaking. She swallowed hard. Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone nearby, she lowered herself into the aisle. Right there, between leather seats and curious stares, she knelt, not in humiliation, but in recognition. Her voice shook as she apologized, not just for the mistake, but for the judgment, for the assumption, for the pain she had caused without thinking. Tears filled the father's eyes. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to apologies. He wasn't used to being defended. He held his son closer as the boy watched silently, sensing the weight of the moment, even if he didn't fully understand it. The flight attendant stood, her hands trembling slightly, and offered to help them settle back into their seats. She brought extra blankets, a warm drink, and a small toy for the boy. Her movements were gentle now, deliberate, as if each action was a chance to make amends. As the plane took off, the father stared out the window, the city shrinking beneath them. His heart felt lighter than it had in months. not because of where he was sitting, but because someone had finally seen him. Someone had said, without words, that he mattered. The man in the suit caught his eye and offered a small nod. No speeches, no grand gestures, just understanding. The father nodded back, gratitude swelling in his chest. The rest of the flight passed quietly. The boy slept peacefully, wrapped in warmth and safety. The father thought about the journey ahead, about his mother waiting in a hospital room, about the uncertainty that still lay before him. Nothing had magically fixed his life. His struggles hadn't disappeared, but something inside him had shifted. He realized that dignity could be restored in a moment, that kindness could arrive unexpectedly, that even when the world felt heavy with judgment, there were still people willing to stand up, to speak out, to kneel if necessary, and say, "I was wrong." When they landed, the flight attendant approached them one last time. She thanked him for his patience. She said the experience had reminded her why she chose a job centered on service. She promised to do better. He smiled softly and told her that doing better was all anyone could ask. As he walked through the airport holding his son's hand, he felt taller somehow, steadier. The boy looked up at him and asked if they were going to be okay. The father squeezed his hand and said yes, not because he knew the future, but because he believed it. This story isn't about first-class seats or powerful investors. It's about the quiet battles people fight every day. It's about how easy it is to judge and how powerful it is to choose compassion instead. Somewhere out there, someone is standing in an aisle of their own life, being told they don't belong. And somewhere else, someone has the chance to notice, to pause, and to change everything with a single act of kindness. If this story moved you, let it remind you that kindness talks louder than status, louder than rules, louder than assumptions. Take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that empathy can change lives. Because you never know when 1 minute of courage or compassion might be the moment that lifts someone from shame to hope and leaves a lasting imprint on both their heart and yours.